Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Fury Road event, in which the War Machine is added to the game, so let's get into it. As far as the troop itself, it comes in with brown, red arcanes at only 200 glory each, so great time to be stocking up if you need them to upgrade anything. As far as the troop itself, is set up as a super anti-divine counter. It ends up dealing some damage to an enemy, that's boosted by skulls for a little bit extra damage, and then all that ends up getting tripled for against divines. So this is going to be able to almost one-shot, in some situations one-shot various divines. It has a skull trait to go with it as well, to be able to do 2 times damage to divines. Pretty similar kind of aspect as Crimson Bat, except it's capable of one-shotting rather than having the 4 times skull damage. What it makes up for with it is tankiness, has that 50% skull reduction, as well as a little bit of explode at the start of a battle. Overall, it's not horrible. I don't really see this being used too much. 4 times divine definitely is nowhere near as popular as it was, like before the Divine Ishbala nerf. However, it's still usable using 4 times divine. It's just not something you tend to see that often. So very rarely are you going to need a hard counter to it, similar to this. But in those situations, you might be able to end up bringing it out, and at least this week with 20% extra stats, it will kind of be okay. But in most situations, it is going to be super situational and probably not used compared to other high damaging troops, like various mythics. So overall, rather average. But if nothing else, another troop for Sin of Maraj, pretty nice. This Sin of Maraj, of course, has very few things. However, with that being said, the event key drop table is not completely useless this week. If we go over to the Kingdom of Sin of Maraj, we can end up seeing everything here. So if we just click over to here, might as well do it based on rarity order and click show all. We can end up seeing that Scourge of Honor exists here. So Scourge of Honor is very good. He's among one of the better true damage options in the entire game. He's basically like Phoenicia, but true damage. He ends up doing true damage to all enemies, which is a pretty average amount compared to a full AoE true damager. However, his main gimmick is he gains 2 mana back for each curse or disease enemy, and this does stack. So if they're both cursed and diseased, he gets 4 mana back for that unit, meaning in total he can get 16 mana back. 16 mana is a lot because he has a 22 mana cost, meaning if you had the entire enemy team both cursed and diseased, you would only end up needing another 6 mana to cast them after having just casted them. So that's a very, very small amount, and among one of the more spammable mythics that doesn't specifically have any amount of board control. So pretty nice. Aside from that, he also has Curse and Disease on random whenever he takes an extra turn, which this normally is kind of underwhelming. However, of course, those are the 2 stats effects that he specifically needs for his ability, so it gets really good synergy with him being able to spam his ability even more than normal. So overall, pretty decent true damager, and can be used for quick kill teams. It's really good in situations where Phoenicia might not want to double cast. Like if you need like a double cast AoE, Scourge of Honor can actually be one of the quickest options in the entire game, simply because your first cast, you can end up getting his mana there, and then for the second one, you normally only need 6 for the follow-up. So it's normally his first cast is a little bit slower, but his second one is super, super quick. So there are some situations where you can bring it out. I personally don't feel like I use it much, but he is under that mythic that gains a lot of benefit too. He's under the same category of Phoenicia, where it gets 6 damage, and where Phoenicia doubles its damage, this is doing true damage, which is technically like doubling it, in that it's only doing it to HP, so you don't have to worry about the defensive stat of a enemy. But anyways, if you're opening event keys this week, you're probably looking for Scourge of Honor mythic. Aside from that, there's some okay legendary pickups, like Lust is pretty funny when you set up like 2 of them on defend, though given that you can't run 2 for Guild War defense, it's very rarely used in that context. And aside from that, Wrath is kind of interesting because it gets a bunch of explodes off its skulls, and it has a double convert to go with it, which can have some amount of potency. But aside from that, pretty average kingdom, with the main gimmick on most of them being that they could do a little explosion in combination with their ability. So like that one potion thing that you can get for various events, like world events for example, that ends up doing a bunch of explosions at the start of battle. Even without potion effects, you can still get that by using a bunch of Sin of Maraj troops, as almost every single one of them does a single explode at the start of battle. So if you're using like 2, 3, 4 of them, you'll explode a pretty substantial amount off the starting board. So it is basically the main gimmick with Sin of Maraj, though not all troops end up having it from this location. Oddly enough, some of the best troops from this location actually do not have it in their arsenal. But overall, if you're opening event keys this week, it's probably for Scourge of Honor and almost no other reason, unless you're just simply getting it to get Sin of Maraj to a higher star level, which if I'm not mistaken is actually the lowest star level, just now getting to 16. So yeah, it's kind of behind, but it's getting there. It was the most recent kingdom added to the game, not counting Nexus. So it still has a bit of catching up to do. Gosh, Nexus has like none. It's at like 11. We still have not had a single event for Nexus since it came out in late November, early December. When was it? One of those 2. I think it was late November last year. We still have not gotten an event since then. Eventually, Nexus will get one. Some point. Anyways, So as far as other things, of course we have a standard world event this week, and by standard I mean the scoring system is as annoying as it's ever been. Main thing you need to know, it's basically rarity order with one very specific exception. The War Machine does not gain more points. So if you're running your free battles, like literally you bought tier 0, it is probably worth taking the War Machine. However, if you bought literally any amount of tiers whatsoever, the War Machine, this one right here, the one that says War Machine, that's under Epic Rarity, you never ever want to take this. It does not scale. It's actually the only room that does not scale. And while it does have an initial higher amount of points, it'll quickly get outpaced by literally every other room. So I would highly, highly, highly advise never taking War Machine. Aside from that, it's just rarity order, where the ultra rare is technically the second best, or the second worst, I mean. And then you know, it's just rarity order from highest to lowest rarity. So basically, it's rarity order, but the War Machine's the absolute worst. So that's pretty much all you need to know for the event. Otherwise, it's basically rarity order. Just never take War Machine. Anyways, as far as what we have to use, it's Yellow and Divine. So there's a couple okay options here as far as what Yellow and Divine has. Quite a few interesting skull spam teams, but unfortunately, this is a really weird week not to have it. But we only have spell damage. And I feel like half the teams you could make that are realistic are all skull spam teams. I even show one of them because Divine Spell of Quillen's usable. However, do keep in mind, you do not gain extra damage for skulls. So you're mostly looking for AoE options, like obviously Guard's Avatar is going to be insane for this. Furnace, any of those high damage mythics. If you're looking for lower rarity AoE, Pengalong's the most accessible. You get it for free from completing out Shentan Kingdom. Paladin for like low rarity damage can end up doing a lot to a single target. You have Queen Aurora for some mana accumulation because we have no Empower. Well, other than Sister, but Sister doesn't really count. You could technically do an Uba Step build if you really wanted to. We do have Arc Proc. Well, we do have Arc Proxy as well, but we also have Arch Diva if you want to do like a big mana burst. Arc Proxy does exist. I'm pretty sure you won't run it though. Most of the skull spam teams probably aren't worth going for. Though we will be showing ones in the team section as Divine Spell of Quillen you can't really go wrong with. Even under that restriction. But there's a few things to go with. Oh yeah, and as far as weapons, there's a few. If you need something super cheap, Dancing Blades you get for free off the Drifting Sands hero class. So you have that going for you. You have Doomed Axe if you want something higher rarity, or Dawnbringer if you want something higher rarity. And I believe that makes up a good majority of them. Pretty much any of them that have everything simultaneously is what you're likely going to be wanting to target for weapons there. But other than that, it's just rarity order with the War Machine being the absolute worst, and just never take the War Machine. As far as things that we have going on this week, Tuesday we have the Depths of Sin faction, of course, for Sin of Maraj. Wednesday we have the Sin of Maraj pet, which gives Sin of Maraj bonus. Thursday we have the Doomsayer hero class, which is a pretty underwhelming hero class overall, mostly because if you're looking for Death Mark, Death Knight can normally do it better for you by just killing it out instantly, or even just having it as first slot and just having it die slowly. And unfortunately, this weekend we have a pretty underwhelming event, just arena event. Arena events don't bring anything new, and their payout is horrific. So overall, a little bit of a tame week. However, we don't know. We might be getting a patch this Tuesday. It's definitely happening sometime this month. Maybe this Tuesday, maybe next Tuesday. Definitely soon, TM, that's for sure. Anyways, as far as the Soulforge is concerned, a few pretty good pickups to consider. The most noteworthy is probably Lord of Slaughter. I guess both of these. Well, there's several things to mention. Let's start with Lord of Slaughter. So Lord of Slaughter is really good. It is currently the only troop in the entire game that has a 100% chance to ignore armor. This used to be a mechanic that was on a lot of things at one point. However, now it is only on him. But he gets to do this with a Doomstorm. He gets to do this with among one of the better skull converts in the entire game, not only converting all brown to Doom Skulls, but also creating 6 additional on top of that, while also having potentially double Death Mark and double Bleed, with the most notable thing being that he actually can place 1 or 2 Death Marks. But yeah, he has pretty insane damage output, normally capable of killing 2 enemies in a single cast, while also potentially Death Marking one of the surviving ones. So he has a lot of potential. He also has what seems like a high mana cost, 27, but you have to keep in mind that everything he's creating is Doom Skulls. He's also creating in a way that you're still going to be able to get a decent amount of mana accumulation, because one of the colors that he's denying, brown, or the only color he's technically denying, is not one that he uses. So you're still getting mana for all 3 of your colors. So more often than not, he gets at least half his mana back, if not more. So even though his mana cost looks pretty high on paper, it's actually not that high once you get it going. and yeah, just really devastating amount of skull damage, despite the fact that he can have 100% hit through skulls or through armor to do true damage. He's normally used in second slot, oddly enough, also because he's not particularly tanky. He does have armor, but that doesn't really help much. So he does get ran in second slot, oddly enough, more than first, but it's mostly just to make sure you can cast him more than once. Aside from that, Mistralis, most noteworthy thing about Mistralis, well, two things. One is it's the best enchant option in the game, which that alone makes it worthwhile. It enchants all allies for a single extra turn, basically meaning you're effectively getting 8 mana per turn that you give up, so that's pretty solid. Aside from that, it's one of the only few mythics in the entire game that has extra turn on its ability, specifically some pretty random amount of splash damage while also being able to do a jumble on a guarantee extra turn. It's a pretty inconsistent ability because you don't know how the board's going to get jumbled, and the amount of damage can either be very low if it only hits 1, or exceedingly high if it ends up doing it 4 times. So a pretty inconsistent troop. However, it is used like probably 80% for the 4 times enchant that it has, and most teams that are going to be incorporating are probably using it more so for its enchant ability rather than its ability, but luckily it does have a good enough ability to justify using it for both. But more often than not, you're taking it for the enchant, not necessarily for the exact ability that it has. It's just nice that its ability isn't horrible. Speaking of which, so Suna exists. Suna is basically the mythic we just got at the beginning of this month, but better. So if you want, or if you missed out on the mythic we got earlier this month and you basically wanted the exact same thing but better, there you go, you have Suna. I personally don't feel like it's that viable in the current state of the game, but it's better than what we just got like 2 weeks ago, so you have that. It's not horrible, it's not completely unusable, but it's there. Aside from that, Draculus isn't necessarily bad for what he does. He does a bunch of true damage, gets some lifesteal, 20 mana cost. It's okay amount of damage. Biggest issue with him is Scourge of Honor that we're just going over in event keys. Is basically it's a superior version of Draculus, and in almost no circumstance would you want to use Draculus instead. Very, very rarely. But you're normally just using Scourge of Honor, which pretty much invalidates Draculus, so unless you're getting it for completion's sake or get another start on Golvania, or if you wanted to pick it up and you just weren't able to get it earlier, you could, but overall, probably not worthwhile. Anyways, as far as weapons, there's pretty much only one really noteworthy thing to mention, that is Get Doomed Crossbow. I highly advise not leaving this week without if you can scramble together resources for it. This costs a lot of red, however, super worth it. It's one of the 6 really good AoE Doom Skull converting weapons. It's the category of Doom weapon that you pretty much want to get, pretty much the only Doom weapon category that is 100% worth it regardless of what your intention is. But yeah, these are insane. They're a lot of damage. They could be used for pretty much any game mode, and yeah, just great to have, and I highly advise getting it. We had, did we just have Doom Glaive or something last week? So we're getting a lot of them recently, but if you have the resources for it, definitely make sure to get it this week. And I would even consider that a bit higher priority than any of the mythics as well. If you had to choose between one or the other, I'd probably go for the Doomed Crossbow. Anyways, aside from that, off of campaign, if you have the bigger pass, we do end up getting the Chariot today. Unfortunately, a lot of these tarot cards haven't really been having much of a purpose. Probably mess with it a little bit on the stream tonight, as we always do 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the channel. However, it's pretty underwhelming. It can maybe be used as like an armor buff kind of thing for Rowan, but in those situations, I'm pretty sure you're better off just getting more value off a double Rowan, so not really worth going for. So anyways, let's just go into the teams. So of course we have a few events going on, so let's go mention teams for all of the things we have going on. Let's start it from the top with a world event. As far as a higher damage world event team, this one is showed for going deeper. However, you might want to put the Queen Aurora back some for the earlier fights, like switch to 2 of them. However, I'm showing this assuming you're going deep into it. This one's a Dawnbringer. Oh, you might also want to switch out to Hero class, I guess, if you're going super deep. This one ends up using Priest class for that little bit extra yellow. We're using Queen Aurora to get mana accumulation. Guard's Avatar here is for the full AoE to do a primary amount of damage. And Divine Ishbal is mostly just here to give the entire team 40% meta start and pretty much no other purpose. I guess you could technically put it out for another mana or damage, another damage deal if you really want to, because a lot of the mana accumulators aren't too good that we have available for the event. Because we don't really have any like the good empowers or anything like that. However, you can end up doing this to get you another 20% mana start. Instead of going for 20% start, you can have 40%. Also, hey, there's the double lust I was talking about earlier. It's normally used with resummon and something that kills itself out. Anyways, 2 different teams I'm talking about here. But anyways, that's how you use lust. But anyways, yeah, you can end up switching this to be slightly higher up for the earlier battles. Switch out the hero class for something tankier, and you'll be good to go as you get deeper, of course. As far as the next one, this is a scroll spam team I was mentioning earlier. Ends up using Doomed Axe as your only AoE option while using Divine Ishbal Aquilin. Do keep in mind you do not have access to additional skull damage for this event. However, it is something that can still technically be done for the battles if you so choose. You also have the Devoted, which can end up creating skulls. It does say it chooses a gem type, and it means this quite literally because I don't think there's a single gem in the entire game board that it cannot end up creating. It's one of only a few troops in the game that seems like kind of bad if you just like read it on paper. However, they could basically create anything as long as it's on the board, which includes Doom Skulls, Uber Doom Skulls, Skulls, and anything else. So it can be pretty good in this kind of skull spam context. Normally you wouldn't use it as there's better options out there. However, based on these restrictions, it's actually not that bad. Worth maybe considering another low rarity team as well. As far as the actual low rarity team, you probably saw that earlier, and we showed in the other menu. This uses a weapon that you get for free, just from getting 250 wins off the, 250 wins off the Dervisher class from Drifting Sands. You get that weapon for free. Penglong you get for free from completing out the quest line of Shantang, if you haven't already. And Double Paladin is just a rare that you probably have laying around. And that's pretty much the team. Get Paladin fully traded, you get Air Link. This will give you links that you need for everything else, and then you set to double onto green-red in order to feed it directly into Paladin. And Penglong, technically Penglong only needs 1 red to get it going. However, there's no downside to going double because for whatever reason this banner has +4 instead of +3. So you get an extra 1 out of it, because otherwise this would be a +2 green, +1 red banner. But yeah, it just gets an extra +1 for no reason. Because that's how that banner works. Anyways, as far as the faction, this is the Depths of Sin faction that we're going to have tomorrow for Tuesday event. It is going to be a red-purple restriction. Of course, the weapon can be any color you want for that game mode. So here's to say basically a Thrall into Guard's Avatar team, just using Guard's Avatar as a primary damage here. You can pretty much do this with any AoE option, obviously Guard's Avatar being the strongest of them. As far as, though you could use Phoenicia or something else that you might have laying around. As far as the next team that we have here, this is an Angry Mob version of Zugoff, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure if I show this too often, do I? I feel like I might. But for red purple and for some other restrictions where it's a little bit weird, because I feel like red purple is one of the weirder restrictions for it. However, one interesting thing about Angry Mob is one issue that Zugoff sometimes has is, of course, skulls can backfire. Even with the freeze, they still could potentially kill your first slot. And this team doesn't really care about it too much, because the way that Angry Mob works is he keeps summoning himself into first slot. So at some point, your team will just be Angry Mob, Zugoff, and whatever your other mana accumulator happens to be, this time Leprechaun. So you really don't care if your first slot dies. Like, ideally it doesn't. But your team's just basically going to be double Angry Mob to Zugoff, and that's pretty much the whole premise. Angry Mob does a bunch of mana accumulation. He eventually summons himself. You have that. It does a little bit of poke damage. Zugoff kills out everything. You win. That is basically the premise of this team. And yeah, Angry Mob's pretty good. Not always the mana accumulator you want to do is. It's a little bit slower as some other options. But his capability of infinitely replicating himself while doing a lot of mana accumulation like a Thrall is pretty potent. So definitely really good to be using in factions. He's also more of a faction-like troop, as he does need that little bit extra magic in order to get his full amount of value, similar to Thrall, in order to hit that 64 threshold. As far as pure faction, a couple different ways you can run this. It's actually not that bad of a pure faction. Main reason being it's actually in the player's advantage for once, unlike many pure factions. The main reason for this is it deals damage to an enemy boosted by their attack. If I'm not mistaken, this is one of the only, if not literally the only, boost ratio currently available in factions that are based on the enemy stats. This is particularly good because the enemy stats are going to be way higher than your stats, so you're going to get way more value out of this than the enemy's going to get. So you can normally, I don't think you can one-shot out of it, but you can definitely get some pretty solid, like 2 shots, maybe 3 shots, but probably 2 shots when you're going through the faction. So just having a bunch of them and they get enchanted up, especially when potion effects, not that bad at all, especially since you have barrier yourself. So even if this guy was like super overpowered and even the enemy got to do as much damage to you, it wouldn't really matter because they're just going to initially hit on the barrier anyways if you're running it with potions on a Tuesday event. So yeah, overall pretty straightforward to run. You're mostly just using this guy for a tank. A couple different things you could do for the front if you really want to. You could even just go forward to legend if you truly want to. The main reason for this iron draw here is to make sure you don't die. It has 50% score reduction while also having some durability gain. For the most part, you don't want to cast this if you can help it, just so it doesn't block your purple. However, if you find you're starting to die, you basically just cast them. Otherwise, you're just sitting there to 50% score reduce. And then your Torteruses are mostly just poking, and you get max amount of souls, and you end up killing them off the boost ratio. And, oh, I forgot to change this thing's name. However, I did change the team. This is the Doomsayer class. Let's see, Doomsayer class. But I did indeed remember to do this. Sometimes I completely forget both. But I remembered the team, forgot the name change, but there we go. It's Dawnbringer into triple Broker of Greed. Unfortunately, this place does not have any empowers, well, than Greed, but Greed doesn't really help much because it doesn't mana accumulate. But it doesn't really have any proper empowers. So one of the ways that you actually have to go currently, in this current state of the game with Sin of Maraj, is explode at start of battle, because almost everything from the kingdom has that. So basically we're just using 3 explodes at start of battle, while using yellows that boost ratio the amount of damage that we get off of Dawnbringer, while using Dawnbringer as basically our entire team. If you were going super deep, you might want to change out your hero class for something a little bit tankier. However, for the free battles, if you just claim the 25 gems, it should be perfectly fine to get you all the way through very quickly. And pretty much just a standard kind of Dawnbringer weapon kind of build for the Thursday event. And aside from that, that's pretty much everything, because we have an arena event this Friday. There's nothing really to go over as far as teams. But anyways, guys, if you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Thank you all so much for watching, as always. Greatly appreciated. And I hope you all have a wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for watching.